A golden seed tended with care, a farmer's day is done. A sigh of relief as the harvest ends, but his work has just begun.
So the farming year actually begins like right now, with decisions on seed, on what crop you're going to plant on what piece of ground, fertilizer choices, all of those kind of things. Those things actually happen in the fall before the next growing. As we're harvesting, this isn't a very complete map, but we have a yield map on this monitor that helps us decipher, what products worked well on what piece of soil, those kind of things. We'll take all of that data that we gather over the course of the year and apply that to what we want to do next year.
Last night, my wife and I, Shelley, were talking about it. This is the first time we've ever been done this early. It's a relief, yet there's acres, because of the drought, there's acres that didn't get harvested. So that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, what a relief, and stress is gone. The years, you might say, about over. So
I got the ground ready to plant. I've done, I've planted it. It's growing. The most excitement I get out of this is when the corn first starts to come up, and it's like, okay, now we're going to have something. Because there's always a little trepidation there, always a little anxiety that maybe something went wrong that the monitor didn't tell you about, or something like that. So I feel more accomplishment throughout the entire year, rather than just like, hey, we're done with harvest, I can puff my chest out or whatever, that we had a good crop, or whatever that may be. I get that feeling more throughout the entire year than now. Like I said, it's more relief for me this time of year, because it's done, it's made it, it's out of the field, we don't have to worry about anything. We don't have to worry about a windstorm coming through and knocking it all down. Like it's done.
Nice to meet you, Johnny.
He's the hero.
He's the hero.
Nobody likes a grain wagon driver.
I do.
A family working together and a good friend helping out. Come rain or shine, from planting and growing, praying for water in a drought.
Come springtime, once the ground unthaws, we do a combination of minimum till or full tillage. That we do that to kind of help save with moisture, and obviously with his, I have to wait for John now, with his wet, or with as dry as it has been, conserving as much moisture as we possibly can has been paramount.
The Miller family, just south of North Platte, was gracious enough to take me along on a day in the life of a farmer.
It's kind of the culmination of a very long year. I do about 99% of the farming that actually takes place on the farm.
I couldn't ask for anything any better. Makes me proud. If I've always said that if they weren't helping me, I'd either downsize or go find something else to do, because I don't know, it's just a great feeling, working with families.
The combine just got full, and I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more on there so we can get to the end. Most of our crops are gravity irrigated. This one is not. This is under a pivot, but most of our crops are gravity irrigated, so you deal with a lot of things. Obviously, dry ground takes more water. You also deal with the heat, evaporating that water that you're running down the rows during the year. So it's a really difficult way to irrigate. So once ground is tilled and ready to plant in the spring, mid-April, mid to late April, then we plant. Corn and soybeans is what we raise mostly on our farm. So soybeans are generally planted first, and then the corn, if you can get it in by the 5th of May, which we had all of ours in by the 7th, so we were pretty close. So that's good, And then we still, because we gravity irrigate, we still do a lot of the mechanical cultivation, which you don't see a lot of anymore. So I will go in and I have a machine that goes in and cleans the row of any weeds. We still do use a synthetic herbicide. You almost have to anymore. You can't control the weeds, but we do still mechanically cultivate as well. You know, after we cultivate, which is usually, and we put on a little bit of fertilizer when we cultivate it at the same time, which, you know, gives the corn a little bit of a boost as opposed to putting all of the fertilizer in at once. You know, when we plant, we'll put a little bit on when we plant, a little bit on when we cultivate. On the pivots that we have, we'll even put fertilizer on a little later in the summertime when it runs through the pivot as well. So the more you can spoon feed fertilizer to corn, the better. It's not always possible. And then after we get the corn ridged, which is, we basically have to dig a ditch between the rows so that the water has somewhere to follow.
It's fascinating how you take.
Chris did his best to educate this daughter of a railroader on farming.
Think of this as the human body. So these are the teeth, okay? So this is pulling. This is how we explain this to like third graders. So I'm going really elementary
okay.
on this, but so it's pulling that all in. That's your teeth. It's pulling that all in. It doesn't really cut the stalk off. There are rolling knives. We can't really see. I know what I'm looking at, so
Right.
I know what I'm seeing.
So
you can't really see.
things?
But there's rolling knives in underneath these snouts.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily come together like this to cut it. They kind of come, one on the other like this, and they roll around. There's like 6 knives on each side, so they roll around like this, and they pull the stalk down through and kind of shred that stalk, knocks the ear off, and it goes in through the throat. And the technical term is the feeder house of the combine, but it goes in through the throat of the combine, which is right underneath us. And then it goes into the belly of the combine, which is the rotor, and it's kind of behind us and underneath us.
Oh, you can see it.
Yeah, and there's the grain, and that rotor rolls about 400 times a minute. 400 times a minute, rolls around, and it shells the grain in there. It rubs the grain back and forth on what they call the concave, which is, we've all shelled corn like this.
Right.
It works. It's the exact same way, but it's just rubbing that cob against the wires of the concave, and it falls out into augers underneath. And this is all underneath the combine, in the belly of the combine. Falls out into augers and up an elevator, and every drop of grain that we grow personally goes to cattle, and it goes to animal agriculture of some sort. Whether it's the soybeans for hog feed or corn for the cattle or whatever. That's where it all goes. There is obviously, so the commercial corn that we are picking can also be used for ethanol, so for fuel as well. But most of it goes to cattle production, or animal feed. I guess I shouldn't say cattle production, animal feed.
And like any job, there's good and bad. But for a producer, it's personal, making a living dependent on the land and weather and so many other variables, and often doing it alone.
The stress, the depression, and all of those things that happen, like it's real. It's real because we don't intentionally isolate ourselves, but we isolate ourselves because we're here. And what the heck is going on? And so, it's very real, and you don't even realize that you deal with that depression and those kind of things until you have maybe an outsider come in, like my wife, for example. She came in, and she, 9 months after we met, she's like, "Dude, you are depressed. You need to get out more. You need to see people and all of these things." It's like, no, I'm fine. But you're not, and there's a reason the suicide rate is so high in agriculture, and it's not just because the finances are bad. That sucks, absolutely it does, but it's because we don't know if we have anybody to even count on. We don't know who we can go talk to about it. We don't know, hey, I just lost 8 calves on a random snowy night in January, now what? And we don't have anybody to go talk to. Well, we don't think we have anybody to go talk to about that. And how to deal with those things. And one of the things that I've been pretty proud of, and I'm going to get teary-eyed when I do this too, because I don't talk about my dad like this very much, but I'm very proud of my dad for forming a friendship with the neighbor. And they were never, they've been neighbors for 70 years and were never close until the last 5 years. But they're relatively the same age, going through a lot of the same things, and they've gotten very close. And I'm very proud of him for reaching out and doing that, because my dad doesn't have friends outside of Gary. He really doesn't. He doesn't go do those things, and he doesn't go fishing anymore like he used to. And so those things suck. If things go bad here, we have to have people to open up to, and that's why I take my football officiating so seriously, because that's my group of friends. Those are the people that I can go to and be like, hey, this happened, and if I'm grouchy and bitchy and not happy, this is why, and you can count on it, and I wish Shane would start to form some of those sides of those friendships, because he really hasn't yet, and I think he's probably going to get to that point, but he really hasn't formed those friendships outside of myself and my dad. We're his two closest friends, and that's not healthy. So
visit with one another. I've got super neighbors, just super neighbors, and visit with one another. Talk about the good and the bad. Don't just go home and sit down. Talk about the struggles and talk about the good times. So,
and it's tough, this business is tough, and you're probably not going to get very many of those conversations with some random farmer. So I guess
What will Monday be for you?
Monday will be cleanup. We'll have to clean the combine up, clean the trucks up, hopefully get the combine put away. That's what Monday will be, and then Tuesday you'll take a deep breath, and it'll all be over. And you'll really, and then honestly, there's a little bit of, like I said earlier, there's a little disappointment there, because it's like, well,
Now what?
now what? Now what? Because I don't have any cattle. I don't. I do have my seed business, so now now it'll be time for me to go climb in other guys' combines and talk to them and see what's going on. And I'm working on expanding that a little bit to being able to treat some soybeans and maybe take on another salesman. So I have those conversations to have as well. My dad and my brother will jump right into putting in electric fence and getting cows home from pasture, and getting ready for calving season.
we've got about 350 head of cows and calves that we're feeding, and so we get to start playing with the cows, I guess, here come Monday.
You get tired, just like with anything, but never sick of it. It's what we do. It's in our blood, and I honestly can't imagine myself doing anything else full time. I have other interests. I officiate high school football. I coach youth basketball in the wintertime. I have my seed sales, but I couldn't see not doing this. I really don't know what else I would do. You got, a lot of people our age are starting to plan their retirement. Well, I don't know what retirement would look like, even though that might be, my dad's 63, and it'll be 64 in March, and he doesn't. What's he going to do? Right? He might not have any involvement in the crop side of the operation in 2 years. That might just be Shane and I, but he's not going to give up his cows. He'll continue to do that. That might not be doing the night check in February when there's 8 inches of snow on the ground and it's 20 below. That might be Shane's job then, but he's not going to quit, because why? What else are you going to do? It's a life. It's a life. You live it every single day. You have to. You have to live it every single day. If you don't, something's going to go wrong, And But and I will say this though, you have to have an escape, and we talked about that, a while ago. Because if you don't, it will eat you alive.
When Chris isn't in the field, one of his favorite places to be is coaching kids on the basketball court.
I got into that when I was actually in high school. My thought was when I graduated was I was going to teach and coach. I didn't have the desire to get the teaching degree. I went to school. I was in Kearney for a little over 2 years.
But being a farmer was in his blood.
I wanted to be here all the time because it got to be harvest time. I was missing home. Planting season, I was missing home, and I'm just like, I can't. I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to be here. And so I came home, and I actually, but I've always wanted to coach. It's been something I've always wanted to do. So.
And as passionate as Chris is about farming, he told me stories about his coaching that shows how passionate he is about that as well.
I have never been more proud of a little dude like that because he just worked his tail off. He was the youngest one of the group. I had third through sixth graders, so he had to play with sixth graders. But he made a shot in the game. I'm crying because I do. His mom's in tears, but the smile on his face was the most rewarding thing you will ever see. And that's why I do what I do. No, I'm sorry, man. No, that's my other passion, and that's what I absolutely love it. If I ever got the opportunity to be a high school coach, I would take it in a heartbeat. That's amazing. Jaden comes, how you doing, coach? Every time I see him, and that there's not a better feeling in the world than that. And just to see that you touch the life, and it's not just him. There's a young lady, she's in 8th grade, and played basketball because of you, and she gave me a hug, and those are the rewarding things, and that's the stuff I don't get here, but that's my release. So you can probably tell my passion and how much it means to me, just in my words here. So.
But when it comes back to the farm and the family, he has 2 daughters he's very proud of and says at least one of them plans to be part of agriculture in the future.
Yeah, I've got a granddaughter, Jenna, that she helps every minute she can in the hayfield with cattle. She's right now she's a sophomore in high school, and she's really interested and really involved, and we need women in agriculture. We really do, and hopefully she hangs in there and everything works out for her. Her dreams come true.
Really shows an interest in ag. She wants to be a veterinarian, and that hasn't wavered from the time she was knee-high to a kite. Like that's her thing, and so she's out here as much as she can be, but obviously involved in all of the athletics and FFA and speech and One Act and all of that stuff that you're involved in high school. It's kind of tough during the school year, but during the summer she's out here quite a bit. Jenna will be back, on the farm, whether it's this one or she has her own or she marries someone. She's going to end up on the farm, and she's going to end up involved in agriculture some way, shape, or form. So that makes me pretty proud.
Thank you to Chris and to Mark for sharing their story. I'm Melanie Standiford, Midwest Media.